All right, so I want to break down this situation as far as players um, and their like negotiating their own contracts versus having an agent. And to be honest with you, I think at first glance, why would I when somebody negotiates something for me, I can do myself, and I have access to do myself, and pay them. That's essentially what I think about. Is like how can I be, pretty much the CEO of, or just control decisions I make in my own life, and not rely on somebody who's not going to necessarily give it to me straight every time. These agents have made money off of these players, and when you see a big contract, best believe the player's not getting all of it. Essentially, they're getting half of it, and then some of that portion of that goes to fees that get paid for the agent, which there is a benefit if you're a guy that doesn't necessarily have the value or high value. Getting an agent does help you in some ways, but for high profile players, if they just learn the space or just get people around them, they can actually navigate and maneuver their contracts. And I say it because the NFL does not want Lamar Jackson himself to negotiate a contract without an agent. It hate to say it, it puts the agents in a situation where their value is decreased, and the agents who typically work with these owners, these executives, do the best they can to make sure that they get their piece of the pie, but also that the owners and the executives are getting something good for them. It doesn't always necessarily benefit the players, and they don't always aren't always honest with the players, but they'll sit with the executive and be honest about the player. So essentially, it hurts the player. What I mean by that is an agent negotiating a contract with, a top tier player in the league. There may be concerns about his health or whatever it is. They'll have that conversation with the executive and owner and be honest, right? But the player, they'll kind of give them watered down, diluted. It's just from what I know personally, diluted answers, diluted updates. Not give it to them straight, string them along, not have that personal line of contact. Because these agents, I had to say it, are looking out for, hey, no matter if the agents make a deal, they get paid regardless, right? As opposed to the players. Now there are contingencies in the contract as far as the lifetime of the contract, depending on how they set up their fees. But the agents essentially are going to get paid, as opposed to a player, getting injured or something happened to them, or they get released or have a bad season. Then they're shipped, and the agent can always go to the next guy as opposed to going back to that player. But currently, right now, there are 17 players who are acting as their own agent in the NFL. There's more than 2,000 players in the NFL, right? So this narrative is controlled by agents. Bobby Wagner, DeAndre Hopkins, Jacoby Brissett, and then previously in the previous years, Richard Sherman, Russell Okung, Edgerrin James as well too, who's a Hall of Famer, negotiated their contracts in the past, or have negotiated their contracts in the past. Here's the thing: the business people, law professors, etc., whoever it is, they think that the players aren't educated enough to negotiate their own contracts. Now, I'll say this: the NFL has a higher graduation rate than the average population, right? A lot of these guys finish school in sometimes 3 or 4 years. If they get drafted early, if they get drafted early, they eventually end up finishing school. But there's a law professor. His name's Darren Heitner, a sports law professor at the University of Florida and a former agent. Right? Said, I can think only in very rare situations is an athlete well equipped to handle second, third, fourth contracts on his own. So he doesn't think a player is educated enough or smart enough to handle a contract on his own. Now, what is that? What is that saying? That's basically the undermining of the intelligence of the NFL players that these agents are making money off of. Don't think they're well equipped. The smartest and wisest thing to do, maybe the NFLPA, is to equip them with the knowledge to do that. So they're not paying these large commissions to these agents. These agents typically take 1 to 3%. On these contracts, they get commission, sometimes even more. If it's a tougher contract, they may charge more on these contracts, but they're getting paid, and I would think it would be better to negotiate my own contract and hire lawyers or have to look over the contract once the deal's done. They can vet the contract to see it fits. It's not something that will ultimately hurt me. But Lamar Jackson, he has a small group of advisors around him. His mother. These are people he trusts. I don't trust an agent who's going to come in and hate to say it, their sole goal is to get money off of me. Not necessarily make money off of make money off of just because they're there to help me. But he says Jackson said this. I'm comfortable, but it's probably different because it's your quarterback and not an NFL agent. Stuff like that, right? So that's one thing. He said that about his negotiations. He said it's been pretty cool. Eric DeCosta, the president GM, have been pretty cool. With it. Why would you not want to talk to a player as an executive and be honest with him? Why would you not want to tell a player, hey, look, there's any concerns that we have with you. These are the big things we have. This is why we can't give you that contract. Or here's why we can't do this. Rather than talk to an agent who's going to, not give it to the person straight, but then try to work up a deal that may not be fit for the player. A lot of times they don't walk away happy. Now, did Deshaun Watson's contract mess everything up? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't think it necessarily had to do anything with it. I think it had to do more with Lamar Jackson, in a situation that did not help him with the Ravens, and then they're not trying to give him a contract. So what happened was, in this. So an overhaul of rookie compensation, of the rookie compensation system in 2011 collective bargaining agreement put an end to the previous framework in which savvy agents regularly got their clients exuberant initial contracts featuring huge signing bonuses. So basically in 2011, these rookies were coming in, getting huge signing bonuses, from initial contracts. So this is one way where they limited players getting huge contracts when it comes to it when they're a rookie. The reason why the first contract is so easy to get is because you're a rookie. They're willing to pay a big price for you. So these rookies will come in with these huge contracts, right, signing bonuses, right, upfront money, and the NFL said, no, we can't do that. They're making too much. Let's cut that. Let's axe that. Right? This happened in the CBA in 2011. So, but it pretty much led more players saying, well, if I can negotiate my contract since I'm a rookie, why do I need an agent if I can negotiate my own contract and get the same pay? So what did they do? Right? They opted out to 1% to 3% commissions with agents, and they said, let's just hire lawyers. Now, here's the thing. It was mindset of Khair Elam, when he took the advice of his father, who was an NFL player, who hired an NFL agent when he was drafted, who didn't hire an NFL agent when he was drafted, right? I'm guaranteed this money. Why am I going to hire somebody? So he said, we have a team around him. This is what his father said. We have a team around him that will help him equip and maneuver through this space. So he doesn't have an agent. I say this because this, right? Another GM said this. That law professor said this, and this is what it comes down to. A lot of athletes, whether they admit it or not, are somewhat frail. It's not a great thing to hear all the negative things about you from the team and the team that employs you, and they want you to succeed. By thrusting yourself into a situation where you're your own agent, it's a requirement. You're going to hear from the other side why you're not valued at a certain level. And I think that's sometimes a very tough pill to swallow. They hear it every day. You think hearing that is something different than what they hear on the football field? These agents are soft, and I hate to say it, 60 to 7% of the NFL is black, right? 60 to 7% of the NFL is black. And most of these players, these top high-profile players are black in these contracts. And they're in the weeds making these getting these contract deals as well, too. Giving the players the power back to negotiate their contract, to negotiate their deals, is giving the money back to them. But also, these owners don't want to have a real conversation with these players. I think it's less about them being frail because they're getting told that by the coaches every single day. I can replace you. You're not a guy. They're getting told that every single day. If you play football, you know what the coaches say to you. I had a coach tell me he didn't need me. He can replace me. And it was the truth. I took it. It is what it is. I kept working hard. But these players, they hear that every single day, and they do the same exact thing and keep working hard. What makes you think a contract negotiation is something they probably already know, because they see it in the news, would they be frail about? The agents don't, and NFL owners don't want these players to make their own contracts because it would be putting money back in their own pocket. They don't want to sit. An NFL agent or an executive or a GM probably does not have the willpower or the integrity or the gall to sit in front of a player and tell them about themselves. But they can tell someone else because it's easier. It'll be hard for them to say, you know what, they don't know. Hey, based off Pro Football Focus, you got beat. What? That's how I respect Belichick. Belichick's his own GM. He'll tell players to his straight. He doesn't care about them. He'll tell them to him straight. Tell it to the players. Tell it to the agent straight. He's his own GM. I mean, he's his own GM. These players, these executives, they don't want to give the opportunity and power back to the players. So if Lamar Jackson, a high-profile athlete, gets a contract without an agent, hey, now that's the replica, that's the blueprint to do it yourself. You're going to see more players representing themselves, getting lucrative contracts. Look at the deal Slay just made. Look at the deal they wanted to give CJ. It's weak on the front end, but heavy on the back end. Then what's Slay going to be doing on the back end of his contract? What's going to be doing? They may just cut him so they don't have to pay him. They may trade him so they don't have to pay him. These agents work deals out that may look good for these athletes, but they aren't. The NFL does not want to give that back to the players. They don't want to do that. And I personally think it has a lot to do with the NFL owners being honest about what they're doing and how they're divvying out money. They don't want to do that. So if Lamar Jackson does it and other people take notice, then it's gonna be agents are gonna be less useful. Laurels and turns are gonna be more useful. What does that mean for NFL agents? They stop being less important. They stop being less valued. Because the players can learn. And the players are getting smarter and smarter every single day. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. So if one player does it and they have the blueprint and they teach other players to do it, we're going to see that number from 17, which a couple of years in 2021, it was just like 7. Now it's 17. Players are getting smarter. They're not relying on these agents who suck the blood out of them, and they're getting deals. They're knocking down deals.